The room went quiet the moment he lifted his hand and pointed, not at the choir as a whole, not at a section, not at the front row, at her. "You," he said into the microphone, his voice smooth and amused, echoing through the packed auditorium. The girl in the back. "Yes, you. Stand up for me." A sharp hush fell over the crowd, like someone had pulled the air out of the room. Heads turned, necks craned. And in the far back row, Layla Lewis felt every eye snap onto her at once. She was small in her faded blue choir robe, sleeves a little too long, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. Her hands were clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles had gone pale, fingers trembling as if they might give way. On stage stood Victor Hale. Platinum records, sold-out arenas, a permanent judge's seat on national TV. A man whose voice had filled stadiums now focused on a girl no one noticed. He smiled down at her, slow and deliberate, like he'd just discovered a new toy to play with. "Let's hear what you've got," he said casually. "Come on, give us a solo." A few nervous laughs fluttered through the seats, unsure whether this was a joke or a privilege. Layla didn't laugh. She swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry, her chest tight. Because she knew. This wasn't an honor. This was a setup. If you believe quiet talent deserves respect, not ridicule, tap like and subscribe. Because in the next minutes, you'll watch a soft-spoken black girl get dragged into a spotlight meant to break her, then use nothing but breath, control, and a voice she saved for this moment to out-sing a platinum legend and turn his humiliation into her coronation. Earlier that afternoon, Victor Hale had swept into Lincoln High like royalty arriving at a palace. Security guards went first, scanning the halls. Then came the camera crew, lights blinking, lenses already hunting for the perfect angle. And finally him, sunglasses on indoors, leather jacket draped over his shoulders, his presence loud enough to drown out the choir warming up on stage. But from the second Victor stepped onto the auditorium, his gaze kept drifting to the back row. To Layla. He leaned toward one of the crew members and muttered off-mic, barely moving his lips. "I hate quiet singers," he said. "They always think they're better than everybody." She didn't stand out because she was waving or whispering or trying to be seen. She stood out because she was still. While the rest of the choir buzzed with excitement, nudging each other and murmuring about selfies and autographs, Layla stood quietly in place, sheet music folded neatly in her hands, lips moving as she practiced under her breath. No phone, no chatter, just focus. Victor noticed. And in that moment, he decided. Now, under the bright stage lights, with hundreds of students, teachers, and parents packed into the auditorium, he let the silence stretch and watched her. "Well?" He pressed into the microphone, his tone playful but sharp. "Don't be shy. This is your moment." The choir director, Mrs. Green, shifted uneasily beside the stage. "Mr. Hale," she said gently, trying to intervene, "perhaps we should—" But Victor cut her off with a wave of his hand. No, this is perfect. Raw talent," he said. "Let's see what the back row sounds like." Laughter rippled through the crowd, louder this time, feeding off his tone. Layla's chest tightened. Heat crept up her neck and into her face. Every instinct told her to shrink, to sit back down, to vanish into the robe. But she didn't. She stepped forward, walked slowly toward the center microphone. Each step felt like walking closer to the edge of a cliff. Victor leaned against the piano, arms crossed, watching her. "Don't worry," he said lightly. "We're all friends here." But his smile said the opposite. "Sing something hard," he added. "Surprise me." Layla glanced down at the floor. Her hands trembled. Then she lifted her face, met his eyes, and nodded. Most people at Lincoln High barely knew Layla Lewis. She wasn't the kind of girl who tried to be seen. She didn't post singing videos online, didn't chase likes or followers, didn't sign up for talent shows or beg for solos. Layla sang in stairwells, where the concrete walls carried her voice back to her like a secret. She sang in empty classrooms after school, when the desks were still and the lights hummed softly overhead. And at home, she sang the softest of all, barely above a whisper, so she wouldn't wake her little brother Noah, who slept on the couch while their mom worked night shifts at the hospital. Their apartment was small, thin walls. Every sound traveled. So Layla learned to make her voice small too, not because she couldn't sing loud, but because she didn't want to take up space in a world that already felt too tight. Her mother, Denise, used to smooth Layla's hair before leaving for work and say, "Baby, in this world, sometimes you gotta be quiet just to survive." Layla listened. She became the kind of student teachers loved. Straight A's, no trouble, always polite, head down, invisible excellence. She only joined choir because Mrs. Green once heard her humming during lunch duty and froze mid-step. "You have a gift," Mrs. Green had whispered. "Please don't hide it." So Layla joined. But even then, she stayed in the back row. And when Mrs. Green gently asked why she never sang out, why she always held back, Layla only smiled and said, "Saving it." Saving it for what? She didn't really know. Maybe for a moment that mattered. She just never imagined that moment would come like this. Victor Hale owned the room. That was clear from the moment he stepped onto the stage. Conversations softened around him. Teachers laughed a little too loud at his jokes, eager to show they were cool, that they belonged in his world. Students leaned forward in their seats, phones raised and ready, thumbs hovering over record buttons in case something viral happened. Even the principal stood off to the side, smiling nervously, hands clasped like a junior staffer waiting for approval. Victor was fame. He was money. He was the kind of validation people chased their whole lives, and he knew it. Layla, by contrast, was just a girl in a choir robe, back row, no name anyone recognized, no spotlight, no microphone. Until he decided to give her one. He watched her now with a lazy, amused focus, the way a cat watches something small that can't possibly escape. Not threatened. Just entertained. "This should be fun," he muttered into the mic, just loud enough for the front row to hear, his lips curling into a half-smile. A few people chuckled. Mrs. Green didn't. Her hands clenched tightly at her sides as she stood near the stage, her eyes fixed on Victor. She had spent decades around students, around talent, around fragile confidence, and she had seen that look before. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't respect. It wasn't mentorship. It was the look of someone who didn't want to teach. It was the look of someone who wanted to prove something, even if it meant breaking someone else to do it. Layla took a breath. Deep. Slow. The kind she'd practiced alone in stairwells and empty rooms. Then she sang. Soft at first. Just a gentle scale to warm her voice, to feel the space, to steady the shaking in her chest. Victor raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" he said into the mic, his tone dripping with disbelief. "Come on. This is a stage, not a lullaby." A few laughs bubbled up from the seats. Layla felt them hit her like heat. Her cheeks burned. Her ears rang. She swallowed and adjusted. Picked a song she loved but had never dared to sing in front of anyone. A gospel hymn her grandmother used to hum while washing dishes, the melody that once made their tiny kitchen feel like a cathedral. She started again, and this time her voice grew. Rich. Warm. It wrapped around the words, filled the space between the seats. The room shifted. A few students straightened. Someone in the front row stopped whispering. Victor tilted his head, listening. Not impressed, not yet satisfied. He stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "Nice tone," he said, nodding slowly. "I'll give you that. But tone is easy. Let's see range." He turned to the pianist with a snap of his fingers. "Play something higher." The keys jumped upward, sharp and sudden. Layla hesitated. That was high, higher than she'd planned. Too high for most singers her age. But she nodded anyway, and followed. Her voice reached for the notes. It held, but strained, just a little. Victor's lips curled into a smile. There it was. He leaned toward the mic. "Careful," he said lightly. "Don't hurt yourself trying to sound like someone you're not." The words sliced straight through her. Mrs. Green opened her mouth to protest, but Victor waved her off without even looking. "Relax," he said. "I'm helping her." Layla's throat tightened. She tried again, and missed a note. The room reacted with a collective wince, like everyone felt it. Victor clapped once. Slow, deliberate. "See?" he said. "This is why we train before we dream." The humiliation landed. Heavy. Most people would have stopped right there. They would have laughed it off, pretending it didn't hurt. They would have shrugged, made a joke, and hurried back to their seat. They would have told themselves it didn't matter. But Layla didn't. She stayed where she was, under the lights, in front of everyone. Her hands were shaking now, fingers curled tight at her sides. Her eyes shone, glassy with tears she refused to let fall. Every part of her wanted to run, to disappear back into the safety of the back row. Instead, she lifted her head and said, quietly but clearly, her voice carrying farther than she expected, "Can I start again?" She swallowed, then added, quiet but steady, "I don't sing to be seen. I sing to be heard." Victor blinked, caught off guard. "What?" he asked. "I just need one more try," Layla said. "Please." A low murmur rolled through the auditorium. Students leaned toward each other. Teachers exchanged looks. No one had expected her to ask for more. Victor's lips twisted into a smirk. "Sure," he said, spreading his hands as if granting a generous favor. "By all means, show us." But something in Layla's voice, not defiance, not anger, but steady resolve, made Mrs. Green step forward from the side of the stage. "Layla," she whispered urgently, close enough that only she could hear. "You don't have to do this. You've already—" "I know," Layla said softly, without turning around. "But I want to." Mrs. Green froze, then slowly nodded, stepping back with worry etched across her face. Victor leaned against the piano again, arms crossed, amusement flickering in his eyes. "All right, back row," he said. "Let's see what you've got." Layla closed her eyes. Shut out the crowd. Shut out the lights, and remembered. She remembered the stairwell at their old apartment building. That was her first stage. And almost every time, her grandma would be there. One evening, after Layla finished a song and the echoes faded, her grandma smiled up at her and said, "Baby, you got a gift, but gifts don't shout. They wait." Layla had tilted her head, confused. "Wait for what?" she asked. Her grandma's smile had softened. "For the moment when silence won't protect you anymore." Standing on that stage now, with her heart pounding and humiliation still burning in her chest, Layla finally understood. Silence wouldn't protect her here. Hiding wouldn't save her. She opened her eyes, looked straight at Victor Hale, then turned slightly toward the pianist, and nodded. The first note cut through the room. Clear, strong, unshaking. No tremble, no fear. It wasn't loud. It didn't crash into the space or demand to be noticed. It slid in and filled the air like it had always belonged there. Controlled. The kind of voice that didn't beg for attention. It commanded it. The chatter in the seats died instantly. Phones that had been raised to record slowly lowered as people forgot why they'd even picked them up. Even Victor's crooked smirk faltered, then disappeared altogether. Layla moved through the first verse like she owned every word. Her voice carried warmth and depth, each phrase landing with quiet confidence, as if she wasn't singing at the room but to it. Then came the climb. The place where he'd pushed her before. The note he'd made her strain for. She reached it. Clean. No wobble. No tightening, just pure sound. And then she went higher. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. A few students covered their mouths, eyes wide. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Victor straightened where he stood. His arms dropped from their crossed position, his posture suddenly alert. She wasn't done. She kept climbing. Past the note where he'd stopped her. Past the place where he'd expected her to crack. Past where most voices would beg for mercy. Her voice soared now. Bright. Powerful. Effortless. The auditorium stopped being an auditorium. It became a held breath. Victor's jaw tightened. The muscles in his face shifted as if he were doing the math in his head, realizing she was somewhere he hadn't planned for her to reach. The pianist's eyes widened, fingers scrambling to keep up as he followed her lead instead of guiding it. Then she reached a note so high, so pure, it rang through the room like crystal. And she held it, steady, unmoving, not shaking. Holding, and holding. The sound filled every corner, every seat, every inch of air, until it felt like even the walls were leaning in to listen. Then, gently, she released it. Silence followed. Not awkward, not confused, reverent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then someone clapped. Once, another joined, then another. And suddenly the room erupted, applause crashing in waves, cheers rising, voices shouting her name even though most had just learned it. Layla blinked, stunned. Victor Hale didn't clap. He just stared. Victor forced a laugh, sharp and loud, the kind meant to regain control. "All right," he said into the mic, clapping his hands once as if to wrap it up. That was cute. Cute? The word landed wrong. It didn't fit the moment, and everyone felt it. The applause slowed. The energy in the room shifted, uncertain now, like people weren't sure if they were allowed to keep celebrating. Victor cleared his throat. "But high notes aren't everything," he added quickly, waving a hand. "Anyone can squeal if they push hard enough." Anyone. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Mrs. Green stepped forward before she could stop herself. "That was not squealing, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice steady but firm. "That was control." Victor shot her a hard look. "This is my master class," he snapped. "Let me teach." One of the camera guys flinched, like he'd seen this before. The warmth drained from Victor's face as he turned back to Layla. "You think you impressed me?" he said. "Let's see you do it again. This time, match me." He nodded sharply to the pianist. "Give me my song." The opening chords of one of his biggest hits rang out, the song everyone knew, the one fans waited for at every concert, the one famous for its impossible climax. The note only Victor Hale could hit. His signature. He lifted the mic and sang the verse, confidence pouring out of him now, his voice filling the room the way it always had. The crowd couldn't help it. They cheered, caught up in the familiarity. Then he turned and pointed at Layla. "Your turn." The challenge hung heavy in the air. Layla hesitated. Her heart thudded in her chest. She knew that note. Everyone did. It was legendary for a reason. For a moment, doubt flickered across her face. Then she nodded. Again. And stepped forward. They sang together. At first, Victor came in loud, his voice bursting from the speakers with practiced confidence. He leaned into every word, adding flair, stretching syllables, reminding everyone exactly why his name filled arenas. Layla followed. Not trying to outshine, not trying to compete, just steady, focused, locked into the music. Where Victor performed, Layla listened. Their voices braided through the verse, different styles sharing the same melody. The crowd swayed, caught between spectacle and surprise. Then they reached the climb, the part everyone waited for. Victor took a step forward, planting his feet like a man bracing for impact. He leaned into the mic, drew a deep breath, and pushed. He hit the note. Strong, familiar. The crowd roared as if on cue. He held it. 1 second, 2, 3. Then his voice cracked. Just slightly. So fast some people almost missed it. But it was there, a brief fracture in the sound, a flicker of strain that didn't belong. Victor dropped down to the next phrase, recovered quickly, flashing a grin like nothing had happened. He turned and gestured to Layla. "Your turn." She closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, inhaled, and went for it. Her voice didn't crack. It didn't wobble. It didn't claw its way upward. It rose, clean, smooth, higher, then higher still. She passed Victor's note like it wasn't even there, kept climbing. The sound in the room changed. It wasn't just loud anymore. It was electric. Students shot to their feet. Phones flew up into the air, recording with shaking hands. Mrs. Green's hands flew to her mouth, tears already filling her eyes. Layla held the note. Longer than Victor had, stronger, steadier. And just when it felt like she'd reached the ceiling of what was humanly possible, she lifted it one step higher. A note Victor Hale dodged alive because it was too risky, and she owned it. The room exploded. Cheers crashed like thunder. People shouted her name. The applause was so loud it drowned out the piano. Victor froze. He tried to laugh it off, but his face betrayed him. Shock, disbelief, something close to fear. He took a breath, tried to match her, opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. A thin, broken sound escaped, nowhere near the note. He stopped, lowered the mic. And in that moment, with hundreds of witnesses watching, everyone saw it clearly. Victor Hale had been outsung by the girl from the back row. 10 receipts. The truth comes out. Before Victor could say a word, before he could joke his way out of what everyone had just seen, a clear voice rang out from the side of the stage. "Actually," Mrs. Green said, stepping forward into the light, "there's something everyone here should know." Victor shot her a sharp, warning look, the kind meant to stop people mid-sentence. At the side of the stage, the AV kid tapped his laptop and turned the screen toward the nearest teacher. He'd been recording the entire masterclass for the district archive. You want to know what this really was? He whispered. Look. The raw feed rolled back, Victor's voice off camera, clear as day. I need one kid to crack. That's the clip. She didn't stop. She lifted her chin and looked out at the crowd. Layla Lewis has been quietly auditioning for conservatories for the past 2 years, she said. Some of the best in the country. And she's been accepted into 3 of them, on full scholarships. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. Whispers broke out like sparks. Layla's eyes flew open, her breath caught in her throat. Mrs. Green turned to her and smiled, warm and proud. I didn't say anything because you asked me not to, she said softly. You said you didn't want special treatment. But I think today earns the truth. Before the room could settle, the principal stepped forward as well, adjusting his tie nervously. And just last week, he added, we received official confirmation that Layla placed first in the state vocal competition. Blind auditions. The judges never saw her. They only heard her voice. The crowd buzzed louder now, energy crackling through the seats. Victor looked from Mrs. Green to the principal, stunned. A voice called out from the back, loud and honest. Then why isn't she front and center? Mrs. Green answered without hesitation. Because she never asked, she said. She never pushed her way forward. She never demanded anything. She just waited. Layla's chest tightened as the words sank in. She hadn't known they would reveal any of this. She'd kept it quiet on purpose. She hadn't wanted attention, only a chance. Victor swallowed hard. Color crept up his neck, flushing his face. So this was planned? He snapped. A setup to make me look stupid? Mrs. Green met his eyes. No, she said calmly. This was you choosing the wrong person to humiliate. The energy in the auditorium shifted. What had started as applause and shock turned into something heavier. Students murmured to one another. Parents leaned close, whispering in low, urgent voices. Everywhere, phones stayed raised, red recording lights blinking like dozens of unblinking eyes. This wasn't a concert anymore. It was a reckoning. Victor sensed it and tried to pull the moment back under his control. Listen, he said into the mic, forcing a calm tone that didn't quite land. I was just trying to challenge her. That's what I do. I push people to be better. A voice from the crowd cut through him. You called her cute. Another voice followed, louder. You said she'd hurt herself. Then another. You laughed when she missed. Each accusation stacked on the last, building a wall of words he couldn't dodge. Heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement rippled outward. The clips were all there, fresh in everyone's minds, already recorded. Victor's jaw clenched. His grip tightened on the microphone. This is getting out of hand, he snapped. I came here to inspire, not to be attacked. The room didn't answer him. Layla did. She stepped closer to the mic, heart pounding, hands still trembling, but her voice steady. She looked out at the room first, then back at Victor. I don't sing to be seen, she said. I sing to be heard. Not loud, not angry, just clear. You could have inspired without embarrassing me, she said. The room fell silent. Not even a whisper. She looked straight at him, meeting his eyes for the first time since stepping on stage. You didn't even ask my name. A voice from the middle rows snapped the silence. Say her name. And then it spread, row by row, louder each second. Layla, Layla, Layla. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. They landed heavier than any note she'd sung. For a moment, Victor Hale, the man who always had something to say, always had a comeback, opened his mouth, then closed it. And for the first time that night, with hundreds of witnesses watching, he had nothing. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Headlines screamed across phones and laptops. Famous singer Humiliate student gets outsung live. Clips of Layla's soaring note flooded every platform. So did the moment Victor's voice cracked. Side-by-side edits, slow motion, millions of views in hours. By midnight, the clip had a name. #BackRowNoMore. But what spread even faster was the context. The pointing finger, the smirk, the laughter, the word cute. People replayed it frame by frame, no longer watching a performance but a pattern. Comment sections filled with anger, with disbelief, with stories of their own. And then others began to speak. Former backup singers posted videos describing rehearsals where Victor mocked them in front of crews. Musicians shared old clips where he'd belittled contestants on TV and laughed it off as tough love. Journalists dug up interviews where he bragged about breaking egos to build stars. Within 48 hours, the consequences came. His record label released a carefully worded statement announcing they were reassessing their partnership. The network behind his hit show announced Victor Hale would be stepping away while they reviewed the situation. Sponsors quietly pulled their ads, not canceled, they said, just paused. Under review. But at Lincoln High, something different happened. Something that wasn't about him at all. The school board voted unanimously to create a full arts scholarship fund in Layla's name, dedicated to students who showed exceptional talent but stayed unseen. And the district announced a new policy. No guest speaker, no celebrity, no authority figure would ever again be allowed to single out or publicly pressure a student without consent. It wasn't just about one girl anymore. It was about changing the system that let moments like that happen at all. Systemic, not symbolic. Layla didn't become famous overnight. She didn't want to. What she wanted was simpler. She started singing. Out loud. In rehearsal, where her voice finally took the front row it had always deserved. In school assemblies, where students who used to pass her in silence now leaned forward to listen. At community events, where strangers wiped their eyes and asked her name afterward. Her mom stood in the back the first time Layla filled a room, hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming freely as if she were hearing her daughter for the very first time. Noah went to school the next day, grinning from ear to ear. "That's my sister," he told anyone who would listen. Conservatory auditions came, then the letters, then the offers. More than one. Real choices. The day Layla accepted one, Mrs. Green wrapped her in a tight hug, voice breaking as she whispered, "You waited long enough." Layla smiled, thinking of stairwells and echoes and all the times she'd held back. "I think," she said softly, "I was just saving it." Victor Hale released an apology video a few days later. No sunglasses, no leather jacket, just him sitting stiffly in a plain chair, looking straight into the camera. He talked about growth, about learning moments, about how he never meant to hurt anyone. The comments were brutal. Some people said they appreciated the apology. Many more said it was too little, too late. Concert dates quietly vanished from schedules. TV appearances were canceled. His name stopped trending. He faded from stages. For a while. But the clip of a quiet black girl standing tall and out-singing him in front of everyone, that never did. Months later, Layla stood on a different stage. A small recital hall. No cameras, just families, students, and music. She sang with her full voice now. No fear, no holding back. And as the final note faded, she thought of that day, of being pointed at, laughed at, and nearly sitting down. and she understood. Because sometimes, the moment meant to shrink you is the moment that shows you how big you really are. And sometimes, the loudest justice isn't revenge, it's rising. Layla smiled to herself, almost like a secret. I don't sing to be seen, she thought. I sing to be heard. This is Black Stories, where quiet dignity meets its moment, and injustice never gets the last note. If this story moved you, like this video and share it, because silence shields humiliation, but courage changes the room. And for more stories where quiet strength outsings power, subscribe and stay with us.